I'm Rita McCannon. I'm a lawyer in Huntsville, Alabama. I remember you from yesterday. I'm glad to see you again. And my colleagues are.
Hey, I'm Tandy McConnell. I saw you yesterday as well. Great to see you again. I'm here in Columbia, South Carolina. So we have a plurality of Southerners among the judges. Actually, a uniformity of Southerners.
We actually do, because Jane's from Birmingham too. I'm Mike Miles from Birmingham, Alabama. And part of why I wanted to do this today was to get to see y'all. Pamela and Greg are great fun to watch their teams, and this is going to be fun for us. Thank you for spending your Sunday. Let's see, it's 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon where you are. Is that right? My goodness. We'll be sweet so y'all can get this done and go do whatever you want to do. That'll be this time. This is going to be fun.
Tell us who you are.
My name is Bob Spitzner. I am in middle school and I am excited to be here.
My name is Colin Kershiznik. I'm also in Henley Middle School and I'm so excited to be here and I'm honored to be here.
My name is Danielle Love and we are from Charlottesville, Virginia. And again, I'm super excited to be here. I had a lot of fun yesterday.
My name is Molly Strite. I'm very excited to be here. It was very fun yesterday, and these are our coaches, Miss Curry and Miss Bashane, who are wonderful and work very hard.
Right before you
Glad
get
to have
started,
you all.
we have one more person in the waiting room, and since they haven't started yet, Lynn Meixner. Okay, I will admit. All right, and now I'm going to go back to mute and.
She is.
So I know you've already figured out by now we're doing question 2 today. So I will read it and we will look forward to hearing what you're going to tell us. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson stated that governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. From what sources do the people derive the right to establish government? How is the consent of the governed related to the concept of popular sovereignty? Does natural rights philosophy justify a right to revolution? Why or why not? Why might the principles and practices of self-government contained in the Declaration of Independence have been considered radical at the time of the Declaration? We look forward to hearing from you, and you may begin.
Whereas governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, the people themselves derive the power to establish that government from natural rights philosophy. John Locke postulated that the most basic natural right is the ability to preserve mankind, alongside those of preserving life, liberty, and property. This is known as political liberalism, and it served as a basis for the ideas in Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. Yet another idea used in the Declaration is that of a state of nature. Thomas Hobbes theorized that individuals need to impose government on their peers to avoid the natural state of suffering that results from anarchy. Rousseau hypothesized that government should have individual freedom as its primary function, whereas Montesquieu said that it should maintain law and order as a basic objective. We can see that Thomas Jefferson had all of these philosophies in mind in the Declaration. Quote, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form, unquote.
The 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes concluded that in a state of nature, everyone has rights to everything. As an act of self-preservation, people would turn to a social contract. As defined by Hobbes, a social contract is a mutual transferring of right. When someone gives up some of their natural rights in exchange for safety from a governing body, then they are giving their consent to be governed. Popular sovereignty, which is very similar to the consent of the governed, is a doctrine that the government is ruled by the people. Documents like the Ninth Amendment are examples of this concept, which states that there are rights existing outside of the Constitution and that the order of listed rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The consent of the governed is a concept that states that legitimate governments have no power unless the people give their consent, usually through the process of voting and taking part in a government system. The people give their consent to be governed in exchange for safety and order. And in the Declaration of Independence, it states that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, which helps to balance the tension between order and liberty in the U.S.
Natural rights philosophy justifies a right to a revolution from another country and the freedom of your own government. Natural rights philosophy observes that they are unalienable, God-given natural rights of the people. When Great Britain broke an agreement with the colonists, known as the Charter of the Virginia Company of London, it justified a right to revolution for the colonists because it violated their natural rights. The Charter of the Virginia Company of London stated that the colonists would agree to be governed by the king as long as they gave the colonists the same rights as citizens in Britain. Britain violated these rights by requiring housing of British soldiers during the war, Parliament imposing taxes without representation from the colonies, and even sometimes denying the colonists a right to a trial by a jury of their peers. This sparked Thomas Jefferson to include the statement in the Declaration: whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to abolish it. Therefore, the colonists had the right to withdraw their agreement to be governed by Great Britain due to them violating their natural rights.
When in 1776 Thomas Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence, he established the document that would help to turn the colonies into a self-governed nation. Although the founders believed that a democratic nation recognizing human equality and limited government would be fair and just, these ideas were viewed as radical by many countries. For centuries, divine right was preached to citizens to explain why some people were born into positions of power. The principle stated that monarchs acquired all their power from God. When the founders wrote about human equality, which says that all men are created equal, the world frowned upon them because not following divine right was seen as disobeying God's will. In limited governments, the government only can do what the people have given it the authority to do, and they cannot ignore the people's needs in order to fulfill the needs of the community. Unlike in monarchies, one person does not hold all the power and therefore doesn't have the opportunity to create tyranny. Many countries believe that giving power to the people would lead them to abandon their morals and return to a modified state of nature, where their selfish instincts would prevail.
Timing. Would you gentlemen like to go first?
You mentioned several philosophers in your essay, which was a remarkable essay, by the way. But those philosophers had different thoughts on different things. Which one do you, and this is to the panel, but it's an individual question, which philosopher do you think had it right? Which one do you think had the best school of thought about how government should or shouldn't be formed or should or shouldn't be run?
I think that John Locke had the right idea. His idea of natural rights being something that we are all born with and something that the government can't take away from us. I think that is a good way that government should be run, and that it allows for the people to benefit from government as well as they can.
And it protects the people's natural rights, like Bob said, that John Locke stated: the right to property, the right to liberty, and the right to
Life.
Personal happiness.
life. Yeah, the life. And yeah, it just protects everybody's natural rights and make sure that the government can't take them away.
I
I think
agree.
this is-
Oh,
You go.
I agree with Bob. I think John Locke was very smart, and he had the right philosophy in the sense that we all have natural rights and the government can't take away. And then in our Bill of Rights, in the Fifth Amendment, it verifies this in a way, in the sense that we do in the Fifth Amendment have the right to life, liberty, and property, like John Locke said.
It's also, an example of this is also in the 14th Amendment, saying that the government will protect your rights of life, liberty, and property, and they won't take that away without due process of law, which is a necessity for a functioning government.
I also think that Rousseau had a good idea about that government should protect freedom as one of its primary functions. So I think John Locke, his idea of political liberalism combined with Rousseau's ideas about how government should function, it can be combined to create a well-functioning government.
Allow me to follow up on that a little bit with a specific case. I keep thinking about the Electoral College in the context of consent. Is having an Electoral College consistent in the Constitution with the idea of the consent or the governed of the governed?
The Electoral College is something that the founders put into the Constitution to, as I was talking about yesterday, try to avoid tyranny from the people. The Electoral College doesn't have to follow what the people say, and because of that, we are living less in a perfect democracy and more of a oligarchy disguised as a democracy.
And I believe that the Electoral College doesn't perfectly exemplify popular sovereignty, because there have been times, like in the 2016 election, where the majority of the people did not vote for the actual president that came out of that was the ending result of the Electoral College, and so it doesn't perfectly exemplify popular sovereignty.
This is also exemplified in the 2000 election in Al Gore versus Bush.
So would we be better off getting rid of it and just relying on the popular will of the people?
I believe that it would exemplify consent of the governed and popular sovereignty more, which has been stated as a necessity for government.
Yes, I think, but I also think that it works well as a filter. It's not perfect, but it keeps us from voting in a dictator or fascist.
Thanks. Great job. Thank you.
I think that, I know you all spoke about this a little bit in talking about the philosophers. In what way, if any, is the idea of a social contract, of the social contract, related to the right to establish government?
A social contract is when a group of people come together and say that I am going to take away some of your natural rights that are destructive, and such as the right to kill, the right to imprison, and we are going to take away those rights to protect your remaining rights, such as life, liberty, property, and pursuit of happiness. And that ties into establishing government, because that is what government is. It is a group of people who have come together and decided to all protect each other in an organized fashion with a social contract, which is our Constitution.
And as Bob said, the reason people would establish government was to protect those natural rights.
I don't believe that you can establish a government without establishing a social contract, because you need an order. You need order in any nation that you would potentially be starting. And when you have a social contract, you can put away you can give up some of your natural rights in return for that order and that protection, which is really important for a new nation.
I believe also that a government, their job is also to protect your natural rights from being violated by other people.
Specifically, get rid of the more destructive natural rights, such as I was saying, the right to kill and the pursuit of happiness. There's a dilemma about going into a movie theater and shouting fire, which interferes with other people's right to their pursuit of happiness. So the main, more passive ones are the right to life, liberty, and property.
I know we've only got about 30 seconds. Let's have some fun for a second. So they let you vote. They changed the Constitution where you can vote. Where would you get your information from? Instagram, Ms. Curry, your peers, your parents? Who would help you decide? Who would you look to help you decide who to vote for?
I believe that in order to find my information in the first place so that I can decide that, We've done activities in civics class, and where Miss Curry and Miss Beauchene have showed us reliable and also centrally biased sources, because all centers have all
Rita, is it okay if she, yeah, thanks. Go
all
ahead.
sources have bias, so you just have to find one with as little or as centrally biased as possible. And then from there on, I would just educate myself with that source so I could decide who to vote for.
Or conflicting bias so that you can have multiple sides or facets of an issue coming at you. So you know.
You're suggesting that there are news channels that have conflicting views on things? Really? Imagine that. They sure are. Gosh, that was good. Rita, thanks for letting me finish. I appreciate that. That was great. Thank
Great
You
job.
were all just really great. You delved into some areas we had not heard yet today. And I appreciated it so much. And it is fun when all four of you know so much material that we can't get it all in. You're all almost stepping on each other, but you did it politely. I don't mean anything by that. It's just that you all had so much to add. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
is a great
Thank you.
presentation. Great presentation. Good discussion. Your use of liberalism in that context may raise some questions for me. I usually think of liberalism in the context of the 19th century, so I'm going to have to go back and look up myself and see when we first start thinking of liberalism. I know it's the liberalism refers to the government and the education of free people, and that's certainly what Jefferson was thinking about. And so you used it correctly there, but what I was wondering is, would Jefferson have used that idea? Or would Jefferson have used that language of liberalism? And I truly don't know. So now you've left me with a question I got to go dig up
Well,
and find out some more about.
political liberalism talks about equality for all and the ideas of consent of the governed, which were a lot of the founding principles in the Declaration of Independence.
Absolutely. I just wondered if Jefferson used that word. Which,
I'm not sure. I just know the main concepts and philosophies.
you certainly used the word correctly. I just left a, I got these little questions I always ask and want and can find out, and with Google I can usually find an answer. So that's cool. Thanks so much. Great job.
Bob, you're liable to get an email from Dr. McConnell sometime in the next few weeks. I went and did some more reading on that, and here's another thing I want to ask you about, because that was a pretty good conversation y'all just had. I think two things I'd say real quickly, and then we'll go. I think it was in Danielle's part of one of the maybe answer to Rita's question, where she said, without order, you can't have government. And I was grinning to myself thinking all the times when I was in middle school, one of my teachers would stand up and yell real loud, we're either going to have order in here or we're going to have a dictatorship. I don't know if she meant the same thing you were talking about. She may not have, I'm not sure. Several times, Rita and I have flown to Charlottesville to have the honor of judging the Virginia high school and middle school state finals. And on the way in from the airport, the Uber driver that we would have would drive us past your school. And 3 or 4 times over the years when that happened, we would say, I wish we could get him to stop and let us go to the front desk and say, can we go to Ms. Curry and Ms. Beauchene's class and just listen? Because it was probably going to be the last day y'all were going to have to practice before your performance, your school's performance in the state finals. The more I hear you today, Rita, the more times I wish we'd have told them to stop. I would love to have gone in and listened to the Henley team prepare. We've never seen a team from Henley that didn't absolutely deserve to knock our socks off, and you did today. There's 4 faces on the screen, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to say to Ms. Curry and Ms. Beauchene, we know this was a 6-person team today, because I know they were in every single word and every single facial expression and everything else. What a
Very
wonderful
much, yes.
We are beyond thankful to be able to have them and have their guidance.
They're such amazing teachers.
Yeah, they
What a
really
wonderful-
Taught us everything. They've taught us everything.
There's an old proverb that I've quoted a couple of times today, but it's never been more true than now. That the greatest gift a person can have in life is the gift of a good teacher. And it sounds to me like you are doubly blessed in that case with these 2 remarks. Stay in touch with them. Don't forget about them when you move on. to high school and to universities, stay in touch with them and let them continue to be an influence. If this is any indication, you want to be friends with him a long time. Miss Rita, thank you very much. We good?
Part. Thank you.
And
Miss
I'm
Schaefer?
going to invite you to your room.
All right. Thank y'all. That was fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank
do
you.
this.
Have a nice rest of your day and a nice
It was
evening.
wonderful meeting you.
Thank you.
This was amazing.